One thing I've learned from being in the field for a while and from anecdotal evidence and also empirical evidence that we have about the way that our minds work and the way that we make attributions, and that is that we all tend to have fuzzy theories of causality. And that just means that we don't put a lot of thought into how the causal flow works, the direction that it's going. We don't often give thought to variables that are outside our model that could be impacting the results in ways that we can't observe. So an example that comes to mind is in my field of IO psychology. There's this relationship between job satisfaction and job performance. And we have at least traditionally assumed, I think, in the field that people who are happy at their job will also perform well, that satisfaction will lead to or cause increased levels of performance. However, others have come along since and said it's really performance that causes job satisfaction. When we perform well on the job and we're good at it, we will get this concomitant feelings of satisfaction with our role in the workplace. What if there's a reciprocal relationship between these two things? So what if it's maybe a spiraling effect where satisfaction is impacting performance and in turn performance is impacting satisfaction, and we have this good cycle kind of going on? Finally, what if these two variables have no causal relationship whatsoever? So one doesn't impact the other or vice versa, but really they are both impacted by a third variable that we're not thinking about. For example, if we have supervisor support, if we have good organizational policies, maybe work-family balance policies, etc., maybe those will impact both of these variables together. And so it will look like job satisfaction and job performance, they'll be statistically related, statistically associated. We can predict someone's performance by knowing their satisfaction and vice versa, but there's no causality whatsoever between the two because really we have a third variable that's outside impacting both. And so folks for many years in our field have tried to come up with a solution to this, but really the answer is that we don't know and we may never know because randomized experiments with these types of variables are difficult to perform and maybe unethical or impossible to do. So I think it's just important to take a few minutes and think about what we can and cannot say from our research and to ensure that we are not making causal attributions when we have no basis to do so. And the reason this matters is because we are giving advice to practitioners based on our research, and if we imply causality in our write-up or we even hint at it, this could lead a practitioner down the wrong path when they're trying to help someone. So for example, let's say that we inferred that there was a causal relationship between job satisfaction and job performance. And so if it is really the other way around, if people who perform very well are more satisfied and the causal flow goes that direction, then all of our efforts to increase job satisfaction by making people happy at work is not going to get us to the goal that we want, and that is increased performance. So what we're doing is pulling the wrong lever and expecting the outcome to change, when in reality it's not tied to that lever at all. And so we are expecting something to occur because we have falsely inferred a causal relationship that doesn't exist. Now, what if there's a third variable that's impacting both? That's the lever we want to pull. So although we may never know the exact causality, the exact causal flow with variables like these that we cannot manipulate very easily, it's important to think about what we say to practitioners in terms of which things to change in order to move the dial on the DV. And that takes, I think, more than simply running a causal model and doing our mediation analysis. because mediation analyses can point us, can be consistent with and point us to many different possible models that are really happening in the population in terms of the direction of causality and the different interrelationships among the variables. So I guess the point by all of this is don't let the stat analyses be a substitute for your own logic and using your own expertise in the field and thinking about what's causing certain things to happen, and don't rely just on the analyses to tell us that information, because the stat analyses can never give us an idea of those things. They can't point us in the right direction. And the unfortunate nature of things is that we can't manipulate and have randomized experiments always. We can try in certain circumstances, but that's okay. We do the best that we can with logic and thinking about how things are working in the population of interest that we're looking at, and trying to rule out alternative models that way. So nothing can substitute for our own expertise as scientist practitioners. And one thing that I've seen happen a lot of times when I'm on dissertation committees, etc., is that folks tend to assume that just because someone found a statistical link, that means that certain things, that there's a causal relationship between these 2 or 3 variables. And because maybe the authors have implied that there's a causal link. So they'll say, because job satisfaction and performance are statistically associated, then we should be working on increasing job satisfaction so we can get performance to move in the upward direction as well. And that is an error of thinking. Just because someone found a statistical association doesn't mean that you can move the dial on performance by doing anything with job satisfaction, by altering that in any way. But I think that we kind of assume that and write it up in our dissertation proposal because one of the great researchers in our field had found that relationship and also posited that. And so I think that it's important to not just assume that the person in our field who wrote that study is correct. We just have to take a more critical view of it and say, is there any other evidence that we can lend to this that would show that the causal flow is moving a certain direction? Of course, we never can know for sure, but can we pile up some more evidence that we can add to the statistical analysis? Because the statistical analysis by itself is a very weak indicator. So just some things to keep in mind with mediation. I think mediation is one of the toughest analyses to make inferences about in terms of causality, and we'll get into some more of the reasons why coming up.